Welcome back to the channel. Today on Schmitty's Off-Road, we're watching King of the Hammers. But that's just a little bit of the background noise that you might be hearing. Today, the real objective is long travel on the Pro XP. So we've got L&W Fab, all of that stuff. Obviously there's so many long travel kits out there. Throughout the video, I'm gonna be telling you why I ended up with L&W and some of the cool things about their long travel kit that I'm gonna try out in short course. First, we gotta get all of the blue, weird looking suspension off of the Pro XP. We are ditching all of it. So today, we're gonna be taking all that apart. We're gonna hopefully be getting into the install of the long travel, and man, I cannot wait to show you guys this kit. If you've been watching my other videos, I've been working on getting this thing all torn down. As you can see, all the electrical is out. I need to see if we can get some new plugs for the bus bar. I think I threw them away because I had no intentions of taking that electrical stuff back out. The front, obviously, front bumper is gone, winch is gone. There is all of my wiring for the accessories. A year ago when I did this cage, I had that rear light bar switch panel, put that in there, and it looked sweet, I loved it. But I don't really need it for racing, at least right now. But I've got my dash out of here. Kind of sucks because this is all cut up now, but I'm probably just gonna get a new plate to put in here, maybe have my Razorback gauge somewhere on there, have my battery disconnect. And then I'm also gonna have rugged radios for communication to my spotter during short course. It's gonna be controlled off of the radio, so my helmet will be plugged into a radio, but I don't need all the fancy controls that like a normal, you like see like the big headset kits and the radio turn dial things. I'm not gonna have all that fancy stuff. It's gonna be very simple for short course, but let's go ahead and start cranking into this thing.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe in strength. Now I'm the only one, only one. I was an ordinary boy until I broke the rules, my life destroyed, a life destroyed. Until I walk awake, scream my mind, I shout, the ground shakes. How much can...
Well, the wheels are off now, and honestly, those jack stands are freaking legit. So those are the Daytona 3-ton jack stands from Harbor Freight, and then obviously got the Badlands jack. Thing makes light work of raising that RZR. That was freaking perfect. I definitely pumped on that. Eventually I want to get one of the Freedom race lifts. If you guys haven't seen those, definitely check them out. But it's kind of like it's a lift, but it's literally powered by a drill. And they're like 100 pounds, so you're able to easily throw them in the pickup and take them to the track or the trails, whatever. I want to get one of those eventually, but for now, these jacks and jack stands will work just fine. But we got the wheels and tires off. Now we just got to start taking off the suspension. And we're back. We had to take a little break from filming because, you know, my struggles with GoPro. It went from 100 to 35% battery in the matter of the very first time lapse I did. So what the hell? I had to charge them, and I just charged both batteries and plugged one of them in, and it still was at 35%. Not sure what's going on there, but we made some progress. Got the passenger side rear all taken apart. I've got the driver's side shock off anyway. And let's just say the axle sucks and those radius rods are gonna be brutal. If you have done radius rods on your Pro XP, I don't know if the Turbo S or like RZR 1000s are this bad, but I don't know how you get to the back of the nuts. So obviously you've got the top radius rod bolts and the bottom. Well, the top you can get to by putting a wrench down through this hole here, and then you can kind of hold it there. But this nut down here, it's so close to the transmission, you would have to have an angled, like open-ended wrench or something to get like hooked back down in behind there, because you can't get to it from the side. you can't get to it from the bottom, and you can't really get to it from the top because of the transmission. I'm gonna go ahead and start pulling off the driver's side trailing arm brakes and all that. Once I get that pulled off, I'm probably just gonna leave the axles and radius rods for now. I'm gonna pull the front shocks off because again, that's kind of the most important thing I needed to do today, get those shocks off so I can get those sent off to Double E Racing. I do wanna show you my rear shocks. So they were starting to get some body wear. It's honestly not horrible. I think it's just starting to get the top coating. There's a few little grooves in there, but I've seen some people where it's almost getting into the actual shock itself. So those aren't too bad. I need to get those cleaned up a little bit so George isn't working with some dirty shocks. I think the biggest issue I'm gonna run into on the front is getting to the top shock bolts. I think those kind of suck. You can at least get to the back, but other than that, it's gonna be kind of difficult. The A-arm bolts, not too bad. This, again, not too bad. It's the whole rotor assembly and knuckle isn't a whole lot different than the rear. So hopefully today I'll be able to start unboxing some of the L&W stuff and maybe get it roughly put on. Again, that axle kind of sucks. I don't know. I know some people have issues with them. So I don't really want to get super far into installing the long travel until I have those axles off. But we will cross that bridge when we get there. Well, we ran into a little bit of a delay, and sorry if you hear a lot of weird noise in the background. It's raining and I'm in a metal building, so kind of sounds weird. But I remember back when I exploded my rear wheel bearings, why I only replaced the rear. I was working on the front and I could not get the hubs off. The bearings felt solid. I wanted to still replace them, but I could not get the hubs off, and I forgot about it until today. I've got one off, obviously pulled the bearing apart with it, but see if this GoPro will pick it up. It literally looks charred. Like, it looks like the bearing was on fire. I think I literally cooked the bearing. It's like, I don't know if the GoPro is gonna focus on that, but we got one of them off. We got this one. We got some penetrating oil in there. So I had to use this on the other side. I started with this one and I couldn't get it. I literally bent one of these arms. I don't know if you can, probably kind of hard to see it. I've tried to straighten it with a sledgehammer. It's relatively straight, but it's still not perfect. So I'm gonna try to get it on there. It literally just clips to the edge of this hub right there. It barely holds on there. So we're gonna go ahead and see if we can get it on there and get this side off too, because this is what's holding us up. All right, she's on there, barely. Didn't even budge. It starts to bend the arms. I don't know if you can see it in that video, but it literally starts to pick the drill up and bend the arms. Alrighty, we let those hubs kind of sit there and marinate in that penetrating oil, and we ended up getting it off, but I didn't have the GoPro running. So it's finally off of there. We're gonna go ahead and start tearing the front end off of this thing. Hopefully the axles come out, the front or the rear axles don't want to budge, so we might have to get a little creative with that. But the main task is hurry up, get these A-arms off of there, and then we'll look at the axles. So we've got all of the Zenith blue suspension off of there. Got the tie rods off, and not too bad. So we are so close to getting ready to put some more stuff on there. This bolt, let me tell you, that is the worst bolt on this entire machine. Like, I don't know what Polaris was thinking. You can barely get an open-ended wrench in there. And yeah, that just sucks. So now that I've got all the suspension off, all the A-arms, trailing arms, tie rods, pretty much everything off, I'm down to the axles. Well, I've been having trouble getting them out, so I picked up this bearing puller from Harbor Freight. I think it's actually called a axle puller, but essentially what it is a slide hammer. So I've got it up on one axle right now. I've already pulled out the axles on the other side, but this is the setup I came up with. So I've still got the hub on there. A lot of people will still use something like this, but it'll go into that CV joint up there. It's more for a broken axle. Well, if your axle is still in place, this helps get it out. I've got this little attachment hooked up there to the edge, and then I've got 2 studs in the hub, and then I'm using the axle nut to secure it. So then when I use a slide hammer, it'll essentially pull out the axle. So we're gonna see, this is obviously the front. I did this on the other front axle, and what happened was the axle pulled out of the CV joint. So I had to cut this boot off and take the axle shaft out of there. And then I used these 2 vice grips and put them on either side. And then this piece actually threads onto that slide hammer, and then it would hit the edges of the vice grip so it wouldn't come out of that CV joint, and I was able to pop it off. So hopefully that doesn't happen on this other side, because it made a mess. Damn it! I just pulled it out. See if I can show you guys here how I did it on this last one. So like I said, time to take 2 vice grips and get it in the groove of the cup. You want to go ahead, take the little cone piece from that slide hammer, put that in there, and then take my other vice grip, get it on there, and then take your slide hammer, thread it into that cone. Once it's in there, go ahead, give her a couple whacks. Darn it. Go ahead, put that guy back on there. Just gotta put the cup back in. Give it a go. Uh-oh. You almost fall over. All right. Let's go again. Ugh. Holy crap. Got it. I had these on there so tight, the teeth literally started to get rounded. They're not as sharp as they were because of the force that slide hammer was putting on that CV cup just to get it off. Like, do Polaris engineers or whoever put these things together not know what the hell anti-seize is? Like, This almost has to be a maintenance item that every year you take your axles out and grease them, anti-seize them, freaking whatever you need to do, because that is absolutely insane that is that hard to pull out. And I know we ride in mud, sand, water, all kinds of stuff. So 1,300 miles and not having to replace those axles, maybe it just really freaking damn near welded those things in there. But jeez, that was insane. Let's see what happens on the rear axle. All right, let's give it a go. That's how it's done. I don't know why the front couldn't be that easy, but it's a hell of a lot easier on the back. Alrighty, it's time for an update on the RZR. There is some new stuff on it that you guys haven't seen yet. So we're gonna give you a quick rundown of what we've been up to this week. I was not filming because I just had to get this stuff cranked out. And honestly, there wasn't a whole lot to film. I'm just putting stuff on that I take off. So like adding suspension, like a trailing arm, same process as taking it off, you're just putting it back on. So I'm gonna give you a rundown of what we got cooking and what we got to do today. So obviously we've got the LNW long travel kit. I'll get to the back here in a second. I wanted just to show you guys a comparison up here at the front. So upper A-arm, stock versus LNW. Honestly, the thickness of the tubes isn't much different, but I think as far as like the diameter, but the wall thickness is bigger on the LNW A-arm. And then the big difference is down here on this lower A-arm. The tube sizing is way bigger on LNW. So that's pretty nice. And obviously this is gonna be the +4 inch long travel kit. So we've got the upper A-arms on. One thing we did go ahead and do is we've got this super ATV frame stiffener. So what this does is it essentially has new mounting plates that go back in the back and in the front, and then it sandwiches your stock mounting points. So it really solidifies those, and then it does the same thing back there in the back. But I went with L&W because, for one, I got a really good deal for the entire long travel kit with axles, hubs, what else was it that? Really just the axles, hubs, the long travel kit, because I am running Turbo S axles. I need new wheel hubs. For all of that, it was like $4,100. Crazy good deal, I thought. And that was with the upgraded race spec A-arms. So they're thicker, they've got some more gussets. And I know there's a lot of other long travel kits out there, but I liked the L&W kit. I think it looks good. I think it's gonna be strong enough for short course. I know some people have had issues with it, but I'm not gonna be bashing it off of rocks. Yeah, it's gonna be taking big hits on some of these huge jumps, but I think we will be okay. And another thing with this L&W kit, which it's kind of hard to see how it's sitting here, but the front A-arms are actually, I think they're 1.5 inches forward, and then the trailing arm is actually 1.5 inches back. I believe those are the two numbers. So total, you get about 3 inches of wheelbase. Now that's probably not a big deal, but what I was kind of wondering is the Can-Ams pretty much dominate short course, and maybe it's the power. I don't know if it is, but they also are a longer wheelbase. So I don't know if that helps them jump, if maybe they're a little bit more stable, being low, wide, and a little bit longer than the RZRs. So my thinking is maybe this L&W kit being a little bit longer, maybe it'll work better. I don't know, we'll see. But back here in the back, obviously we've got the trailing arms on, we've got the radius rods, And then we also have this HCR, I wouldn't say pull plate, it's just the radius rod plate. But the reason I went with that HCR plate is you have access to your transmission fill plug. A lot of these rear plates block all of this, and some of them have like a toe loop right here, and you just do not have access into that plug. And it's a lot of people say it's really hard to get to it. You have to pull your radius rod plate off sometimes, or you get like 3 different extensions to kind of wiggle yourself into that plug. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go the HCR one. I know I don't have an HCR kit, but that's okay. I'm okay with supporting a few different brands with this build. I'm not really loyal to anybody at this point. I don't really have a ton of sponsors, so I can kind of mix and match things for what I think is gonna be my best setup overall, and we'll test it throughout the year and see how we like it. But another thing with this long travel kit, we are not gonna be running the front sway bar. I've got the rear sway bar off because we've got something coming for that, and I'll cover that probably in the next video. The way that they do their trailing arms, they're almost a straight line back to where your wheel hub is. So your shock on like the stock one goes pretty much from up there and drops straight down to here. Well, it kicks out on the L&W, and some of these long travel kits, and I'll see if I can find a picture and kind of flash it up here for you guys. But a lot of times what they do, they keep the same geometry from the stock trailing arm, so it kind of comes back to here. And then this hub, or like where your hub and your bearing carrier bolts to your trailing arm, that piece is like really wide. So like it comes in here and then shoots out. And like where your 4 inches of width is all in this piece. Well, I like L&W's, how the whole trailing arm carries out. It's more of a, when you look at it from a top down, you get more of a perfect triangle, not much of a, like an L shape back here, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's gonna be structurally better than one of the other trailing arms. My engineering brain says a triangle is stronger than like an L shape weird triangle. I don't know. It's probably not gonna matter, but I also just kind of like the look of how these are. It looks better in my opinion. But once we get the shocks on there, it'll be easier to kind of explain what I'm looking at there. I've got a vision in my head of how this is all gonna look. But today we're gonna be getting my ball joints put on. I can get pretty much the whole rear end finished up because I've got the wheel bearings in those bearing carriers already. I'm gonna have to get some new wheel bearings for the front. I'm actually gonna be getting a set of the Polaris heavy duty wheel bearings. I gotta get those pressed in there, and then I gotta get my new wheel studs pressed into those hubs, and then we'll be good to go. But the objective for today is gonna be to finish up the rear end, get everything bolted up, so then all we need to do is get the shocks on and we'll be good to go there. Same thing in the front. I'm gonna go ahead, get my tie rods put on there, see if I can get my ball joints put in, and then what we need to do is go through and torque all of these bolts. And we've got some, I don't know if you've maybe heard of this before, but Revlock. So this is a kind of a paint that you'll go through, you'll torque all your bolts, and then you can take this Revlock and put a little bead of paint either on the head of the bolt or the nut, whichever one you can get to easiest. So that's kind of a good, an easier way to do a quick inspection after races. So I'm gonna be doing that and just getting as much done today as I can. There's a couple other boxes over here of parts. Might be able to put my grill on. Those are my hubs, but see what else I've got sitting over there, if I can get a couple other little things knocked out. So we're gonna go ahead and work on that rear end and see where we can get to. Alrighty, so we started going through and getting it all bolted together. Obviously we just got the straps holding up the trailing arms right now, but we've got everything torqued down pretty much. You can see I've got my Revlock Race Supply paint marker there, so I know if this bolt comes loose, it's gonna break that little paint mark and I'm gonna know I got a loose bolt. I've also done it on all my radius rod plate bolts, or my inner radius rod bolts. So again, I'll know if those get loose. it'll break that little paint marker and I'll know I need to go back through and torque those down. But I wanted to show you guys something. Ran into a little issue with the L&W kit. So you can see this hub is pretty much straight up and down. That one looks very good. My top heims are all the way threaded in. So I've got the most thread engagement on that radius rod. So I like that. It's gonna be the strongest way possible. So I don't think I really need to adjust it too much. But then you come over here and look at this one, and it is at a pretty good angle. And what I noticed, I went through with a tape measure. This one measures like 23 3/4 inches, and that one measures 25 inches. And that's from the inner part of the heim. So I'm not taking the heim into consideration. That's literally just the shaft length, and not ideal. So I gotta figure out, I probably need to message L&W and say, hey, like, we got a radius rod, it's different lengths. We need the longer one, because that longer one will take that hub and push it back out. I know I can thread those, so I had it pretty much straight up and down, but I was threading out those heims, and when you do that, you don't have as much thread engagement inside that radius rod, and it's just not as strong, and I don't really like that. So I know those need to be the same length, and we're gonna try to get them to send us a new one. So really all I need to do up here, obviously I don't have my tie rod, I don't have the axles in yet, and I do not have my ball joints, which I have them over here, all nice and wrapped up. And these guys are beefy. I'll go ahead and start unwrapping them a little bit and tell you what we gotta do before we put them on the RZR. These guys are, let's get an open one here. I went ahead and ordered the Keller ball joints. So this is kind of like one of the big recommended ball joints in the UTV industry, but they are straight up beef. Like, these things are massive. And what is really good about these is it's not like a traditional ball joint where you have like, you'll basically take your ball joint and press it in. It actually kind of looks like this. So you kind of have like a ball joint like this. You press that into your A-arm. So like imagine this is the A-arm. You'll take it and press it down into that A-arm, and then you'll put a snap ring on the top. And the issue with that is when you have just a snap ring holding that ball joint in, if that snap ring comes out or these ball joints push through it, you're gonna have a super loose front end. And when you start having that looseness up there, it opens up a lot of potential for broken parts. And if I'm on a racetrack and I lose a ball joint, not ideal. So the good thing about these Kellers are you press it in from the bottom, or if it's on the lower A-arm, you're gonna press it in from the top, and you'll press it in, and then this cap is threaded. So then you'll put your cap on and then thread that guy down in there, and then you gotta torque this down to spec. But instead of a snap ring, you're using that threaded cap to sandwich it down into that A-arm. So you are not gonna have issues with obviously snap rings, because this doesn't have a snap ring, and you're not gonna really have ball joint failures. The other nice thing about these Kellers are they're completely rebuildable and they're adjustable. So it's got a little kind of a needle bearing grease zerk up there, or a needle grease zerk, whatever you wanna call it. So what you can do is you can fully grease these. You don't wanna over grease and crank the crap out of them, but a lot of people put maybe 2 or 3 pumps of grease after each ride or after each wash. But you grease them, and then once you put them on the A-arm, you use this top screw here, and you can actually set your play in your ball joints. And really, you just kind of tighten that top set screw down to where you don't have any up and down play in the lower part of your ball joint, but it still moves around freely. And then you take this top nut, you thread that down, and then kind of locks it in place. The cool thing with that is as this ball joint wears out, or maybe starts to get a couple grooves in it, you can then take that set screw, tighten it back down just a little bit, and get all that play out of your ball joint. And once that gets to a point where it's too bad, you can just take your cap off, pull this lower part of your ball joint out, get a new one, drop it in, and you're good to go. So we're gonna go ahead and we gotta grease these boots up down in here, And then we're gonna press these ball joints into the A-arms and get them put on. It's been a little bit since my last update for the long travel kit, but we've actually made quite a bit of ground, and honestly, it was just a little bit easier for me to crank out a lot of work at once and not have to focus on the camera, which a lot of it is pretty self-explanatory. Take off the stock stuff, put the new stuff on, yada yada, good to go. But I will give you a quick update of where we're at now, and then maybe show just putting the other side of the suspension on, or at least the front end, so you can kind of see what I'm doing there. But I'll just give you a quick rundown of where we've been at and what we've done. So up in the front end, this is where I'm currently working at. We've got our Keller ball joints, top and bottom. I've got my tie rods started. I took them off because when I was putting these ball joints on, they were flopping all over the place. So I've just got them threaded off for now. I need to put those back on. I'm getting ready to put the front wheel hub all on. And this side, kind of same story. I don't have the axle in just yet. And then the rear is pretty much done. I mean, we've got everything good to go. The last thing that we'll need to do is reroute our brake line, which I don't think will be too bad. Need to kind of pull it over to the side here. And then these little clips don't really line up with where they put the holes in the trailing arm. So I'm gonna see if these come off somehow, and then we'll have to get some clamps like this one that actually slide, and then we'll get those either riveted or get some little bolts, put those down in there, and we'll be good to go. I've got the rear all torqued down. You can see that paint marker better right there. And then here in the rear end, I love how it turned out. So I've got the HCR radius rod plate. I think I might have mentioned this already. Obviously L&W radius rods for now. Eventually I'll probably get upper and lowers that are more adjustable so you can really fine tune the geometry. Right now I'm just gonna keep these and hope that they're good enough. But what I did with the exhaust, so obviously this is an RPM exhaust and it comes polished like the head pipe, but I wanted to clean this up and make it a little bit nicer. So I took the heat shield and painted it with the same high heat paint that I painted the exhaust with. And I still need to run it and kind of get that to really bake on. They say once it's dry, you can kind of run it for 10 minutes, let it cool down, 20 minutes, let it cool down, and then run it hard for 30 minutes. And then that should be good to go. But it just looks super clean. Being all blacked out like that, it'll just kind of tie the whole rear together. Before, the exhaust just looked so small sitting in there because it was polished and everything else around it was black, so it really stood out. And now it kind of blends in and just, again, looks super clean. We should be getting shocks in. By the time you see this video, I'll already have them, but I should be getting the shocks in a few days, so I'll be able to throw those on. But for the long travel kit, pretty solid. I mean, the front end kind of sucked. The A-arms, you had to bend the tabs a little bit on the frame to get the A-arms to line up. But ultimately, I mean, that's what happens, I guess, when you go aftermarket. So we're gonna go ahead, get the front end buttoned up. We got one more part outside of the front that we're gonna put on. And then we'll probably be just about done for the long travel kit. I roughly put the wheels and tires on it. Obviously I got the 32s on it. They're not the race tires and wheels yet, but it looks pretty sick. Let's check it out. Boom, baby. So the wheelbase is about 3 inches longer. I think it's 1.5 inch front, 1.5 inch back, but it does look a little bit longer. It is freaking sweet, but you can definitely tell she's a lot wider. I don't have the tire on that side, and then this one looks pretty rough, but I think it's just because it's not quite adjusted right. But I did have to take, before I let you guys go, I had to take the, I don't know if it's like an air shroud, this little piece. I had to take this off of the brake caliper. So this did sit right here. Well, the issue is it hits the Keller ball joint. You can't even get close to getting that whole thing on there. You might be able to grind this piece down, but I just said, screw it, I'll take the whole thing off. And then brake lines, honestly, I wish L&W would just send brand new ones. both front ones. You don't need new ones in the rear, but I wish they would send both sides of the front, because with this hard piece in here, you're kind of limited on what you can do with this line. So I'll probably just try to zip tie it like here and maybe up here somewhere and kind of get that one to tuck out of the way. I have to still get this one situated. They do send a new passenger side brake line, so that's nice. At least I can get rid of that old stock one. I love the way that white looks. It's not gonna look that good for long because it's definitely gonna get hammered racing, but it'll look pretty when it's clean. So that's pretty much it for the long travel kit. I'm gonna get that brake line situated up in the front, figure out what I'm gonna do with it. But yeah, I think the next video I will have the shocks, so I'll go over with you guys what I went with on that setup. I've got a trick little piece from W Racy coming as well, so I'll show you guys what that piece is all about. And we'll keep chugging along on this build. We're getting pretty close to crunch time. We got to get fab work done yet. And that's gonna be honestly the most time consuming piece. So hopefully the guy that I'm taking it to is gonna be able to crank it out pretty quick, and we'll be ready to rock and roll, get this thing tested. I need to find a place to test it and get some hours on it with this whole long travel kit, get the suspension dialed in, and make sure that we're ready to go come May, and hopefully get to a couple races before May. I know there's a couple practices, but there's also another series in Missouri that I'm gonna try to hit up, at least get some experience on a track. But yeah, she's coming together. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, checking out these videos. I appreciate it so much. And like it if you could, like, subscribe, comment, share it with your buddies, and join me for the whole season this year. It's gonna be a roller coaster, but I'm gonna be loving it. I wanna hit the track so bad. And I can't wait to experience it and bring you guys along for that journey. So again, thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.